Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere that's not exactly dreamy, but definitely sleepy. Imagine waking up in the year 1325. Not in a castle, not as a knight, and certainly not as royalty. No, you wake up as an ordinary peasant in a mud brick house, somewhere in the damp English countryside. The straw-stuffed mattress pokes your back with every twitch. There's something crawling on your arm. The air is thick with smoke from last night's fire, and your blanket is a coarse, itchy wool that smells vaguely of sheep and despair. You cough, partially because of the smoke, partially because you've probably had bronchitis for 6 years and no one told you. There's no glass on the window, just a wooden shutter creaking in the wind. Outside, it's not quite dawn yet. A rooster is already screaming. You think about throwing something at it, but realize that you need that rooster for eggs. Well, assuming it's not just there for noise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is right now in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, and your bones protest like you've aged 40 years overnight. But don't worry, you're probably only about 25. That's basically senior citizen status in medieval Europe. You scratch your head, and bingo, head lice. Congratulations, it's going to be a beautiful day. The first thing you notice is the chill. There's no central heating, no fireplace in your room, just the main hearth in the shared family space. And when I say family, I mean about 8 people, possibly more if Uncle Wilfred has dropped by unannounced again with his 2 geese and 0 sense of boundaries. You shuffle across the dirt floor, trying not to stub your toe on a stray rock or step in something unpleasant. You probably don't have shoes, they're expensive. If you're lucky, you've got some leather-wrapped foot things tied with string. They offer all the support of a wet tortilla. You push open the door and step outside. The morning air smells earthy. And by earthy, I mean it smells like animals, wet grass, and that unfortunate pile of composting dung your neighbor started last week. The sky is that kind of gray that feels permanent, like the sun just gave up on this part of the world. It's going to rain. Again. But hey, at least it's not hailing. Yet. Time to get started. No time for daydreaming, unless you want your lord to accuse you of idleness. And medieval lords are about as forgiving as a broken chamber pot. You mumble a half-hearted prayer under your breath. That's expected. You're a God-fearing villager in a world where the church watches everything, including what you eat on Fridays. Your first job of the day is to fetch water from the stream. You grab a bucket, wooden, heavy, always leaking, and head down the path. Mud clings to your feet like it's got abandonment issues. You pass a chicken pecking at something that might be a dead frog, and make a mental note to not eat that chicken's eggs this week. You wave to your neighbor, who is already bent over in the field, muttering angrily at a stubborn root. It's 5:30 a.m. Everyone's up. Everyone's tired. This is normal. Reaching the stream, you fill the bucket, watching the silt swirl inside. No filter, no purification tablets. This is your drinking water, your cooking water, your everything water. Sometimes a sheep dies upstream and you all get sick for a week. It happens. You try not to think about it. You carry the bucket back home, arms straining. One handle gives way, splashing your leg. You curse, quietly. You don't want the village priest to hear. He's always warning people about loose tongues and the devil's influence, and you don't have time to get accused of heresy today. Back inside, the house is slowly waking. A baby cries. Someone sneezes. The fire from last night has to be rekindled, so you take flint and steel and begin the slow, painful process of creating a spark. It takes about 10 minutes, a scraped knuckle, and the sacrifice of your last nerve. Eventually, you get a small flame. Triumph. You toss on some damp kindling. It hisses and smokes, and soon your one-room dwelling smells like wet ashes and goat hair. Again, totally normal. You look around at your family. They're all thin, all tired. Your mother is already kneading dough made from barley flour and water, no yeast, no butter, no fun. Breakfast will be coarse bread and maybe some dried peas if you're lucky. You might also get a splash of ale, because the water might give you dysentery. That's right, kids drink ale. Not to party, just to survive. Historians still argue whether the average peasant's diet was as grim as it sounds. Some evidence suggests seasonal abundance in rural areas, while others insist famine was the rule, not the exception. Either way, breakfast is not something you look forward to, it's just something you survive. Outside, the church bell rings. Not a call to prayer, more like a call to obedience. It's time to get to the fields. You sigh, gulp your bitter barley bread, and brace yourself for what's coming. If you're lucky, the sun will stay behind the clouds, and your Lord won't come inspect your work too closely. If not, well, hope you enjoy being yelled at in Norman French. You grab your hoe, which is really just a stick with a blade tied to it. High-tech tools are for the nobility. You kiss your mother on the cheek, she's already coughing again, and step back into the mud, back into the struggle, back into 1325. This is your life now. Welcome to the past. Hope you brought hand sanitizer. Your mouth tastes like boiled moss and old pennies, and surprise, dental hygiene isn't really a thing here. You wipe your gritty hands on your tunic, which doesn't help, because the tunic is basically a crusty apron at this point. You wonder if your breath is bad, then remember that everyone's breath is bad. No one cares. No one has any teeth left to care with. There's no toothbrush in your world, no minty fresh swish of mouthwash, no floss. What you do have is a twig. Maybe a frayed end if you're fancy. If you're really up to date with trends, you might chew on some sage or ash bark. Supposedly, that helps. Probably doesn't. What you definitely don't have is a dentist. Unless you count the guy who also pulls nails and tends sheep. You run your tongue over your teeth. It feels like barnacles clinging to a rotting ship hull. Your gums are puffy. That molar has been aching for 3 months. One day soon, it'll just fall out during dinner, and you'll thank the heavens for small mercies. You're 26 and have the smile of a 90-year-old pirate. What's wild is that historians still argue whether medieval people actually cared about oral health. Some manuscripts mention herbal pastes or teeth-cleaning powders made of crushed bones, salt, or chalk. Monks wrote about dental pain and abscesses. Some even recommended cloves for the ache. But for the average peasant, you're lucky if your teeth stay in your head long enough to rot in place. You glance at your reflection in the rippling stream as you pass it again. Yikes. No toothbrush, no comb, no mirror, not unless you count polished metal, which does not flatter. Your hair looks like it lost a bet with the wind. And your skin? Let's just say it has texture. You scratch an itch on your scalp. Yep, still lice. They've basically moved in and started a family. You don't even charge them rent. You pull a few bitter leaves off a nearby plant and start chewing. It's supposed to help with breath, or maybe digestion. Or maybe it's a weed. Either way, it's better than nothing. Sort of. It tastes like old socks. Back at the house, your younger brother is wincing, clutching his cheek. Another tooth gone. Your mother shrugs. She suggests he rinse his mouth with cold ale and walk it off. That's the extent of your family's dental plan. You've heard tales, vague and terrifying, of barber surgeons. The name says it all. He'll cut your hair, maybe your face, and if you pay him a chicken, he'll yank your rotten tooth with something that looks suspiciously like a fireplace poker. Anesthetics? Try biting down on a stick and screaming into the void. Funny thing, historians still debate whether some tooth decay was actually less severe back then due to the lack of sugar. Refined sugar didn't flood Europe until after contact with the New World, so your rotten smile isn't quite as candy-fueled as today's might be. Still, you do eat bread constantly, rough, grainy, grit-filled bread that wears your enamel down like a slow-moving wood file. Oh, and don't forget about abscesses. Those delightful little bubbles of doom. When infection sets in, and it will, your jaw swells, your face puffs up, and sometimes, if you're very unlucky, the swelling travels down into your neck and suffocates you. That's right. You could literally die of a toothache. Still, some oddities in the records mention people cleaning their teeth with goose feathers, or storing them in jars when they fell out, as if they planned on using them later, like medieval dentures. Scholars argue whether this was sentimental, religious, or just plain weird. But one thing's for sure, no one's flashing a Hollywood grin around here. You remember old Bess, the village herbalist. She's 42, so basically ancient. Her teeth are long gone, but she swears by a tea made from nettles and burnt antler. It's supposed to keep your gums tight. She also insists rubbing a frog's belly on your jaw cures inflammation. You tried that once. The frog did not enjoy it. Neither did you. At this point, you realize something unsettling. You might be one of the better groomed people in town. Sure, you haven't bathed this month, and you're 80% dirt by mass, but at least you haven't lost all your teeth. Yet. You sigh, spit into the dirt, and trudge toward the field. Your breath could peel paint, if paint existed in your hut. But it doesn't. It's all wood, straw, and vague dampness. As you walk, you pass old Father Edwin, who's missing his front 4 teeth and whistles every time he speaks. He gives you a gummy grin and blesses your day. It's sweet, if slightly unnerving. He smells like onions and fermented hope. And there's Anna, the baker's daughter, smiling shyly from across the square. She's lovely. Well, relatively. She's got most of her fingers, a good sense of humor, and a laugh that's only mildly wheezy. You'd consider courting her, if you weren't pretty sure you both have gingivitis. Romance here comes with a lot of compromises. Shared lice. Matching dental infections. And a mutual understanding that no one's going to smell great, ever. You arrive at your patch of land, set your tools down, and begin digging. The ache in your jaw pulses with every shove of the hoe. You hum a little tune to distract yourself. It's off-key and about as cheerful as a tax audit. A few rows in, you pause, gripping your mouth. The pain's worse now. You glance down and notice the tiniest bit of blood on your fingers. Fantastic. The next tooth is on its way out. You look around, half hoping a solution will appear. A goat wanders by, chews a boot, and poops. Very helpful. There's a part of you that wants to scream. But there's another part, stronger, that knows this is just how it goes. You were born into this. You don't know any different. A toothache isn't worth whining about when your neighbor lost 3 toes to a pig last week. So you suck it up, literally, because that molar's leaking something, and go back to work. One more day, one more pain, one more reason you probably wouldn't last 2 hours in the Middle Ages without begging for antibiotics and a warm shower. But hey, at least you're not the guy who lost his tongue trying to gargle vinegar and gunpowder. Not today, anyway. You lean on your hoe, wiping sweat from your brow with a sleeve that smells like mildew and goat. The ache in your jaw throbs in time with the dull thump of your heart, but the field won't plow itself, and the Lord certainly won't accept excuses. You've got work to do, and a very narrow window in which to do it, because guess what? You are not just battling poor hygiene and medieval dentistry, you're also up against the clock. And in this case, the clock is the sun, the seasons, and the threat of starvation. Time in the Middle Ages doesn't tick, it groans. You don't own a watch, or even a clock. Those are for monasteries and towers in faraway towns you'll never visit. You tell time by the angle of the sun, the shadow of your neighbor's outhouse, and maybe, if you're lucky, the ringing of a church bell. Even then, you're usually guessing. You dig into the heavy soil. It's sticky, clumping around the wooden blade. You've got barley to plant, and only a few weeks left in the season to do it. Miss the planting window, and your family starves come winter. No pressure. Just generational survival depending on your blistered hands. There's a rhythm to the work, though. The kind of rhythm that dulls your thoughts and lets your mind drift to other things, like how much your back hurts, or whether anyone actually likes turnips. Speaking of which, that's tonight's dinner. Again. You scratch your neck and glance around. The neighboring field belongs to a widow with 5 children, all bent over the dirt like little knots of wool. She's muttering to herself in what might be Latin or might just be a very creative form of swearing. No one has the energy to ask. The Lord Steward rides by on a bony horse, giving everyone that look. The one that says, "Don't slack off, or I'll dock your grain rations." You nod dutifully and double your pace. You're tired, but not stupid. Historians still argue whether the average medieval peasant was truly overworked or just seasonally overworked. During planting and harvest? Absolutely brutal. Sunup to sundown with barely a crust of bread. But in winter? There's less to do, at least, physically. More time for mending, tool repair, and internal existential screaming. Still, here and now, in the soggy green of mid-spring, you are working like your life depends on it, because it does. A bee buzzes past your ear. You flinch, then remember you need bees. No bees, no pollination. No pollination, no crops. Still, you don't want to get stung. You've heard of people dying from bee stings, and there's no EpiPen here, just a prayer and a poultice made from crushed toadstools. You take a short break around midday, dinner, in medieval speak. That's lunch to you and me. You sit under a low, bent tree and unwrap your meal from a bit of cloth, a hunk of dry bread, a slice of salted pork, barely pork, mostly fat, and a boiled onion that smells like regret. You chew slowly, savoring every bite like it's a feast. Mostly because you're starving. There's a rumor going around about a traveling merchant who brought back a strange new spice called cinnamon. No one's seen it, of course, but apparently it smells like heaven and costs more than your entire year's wages. You imagine sprinkling some on your stale bread and laugh softly. Then you cough. Because you're still sick. You sip a bit of ale from a clay jug. It's warm and flat, but safer than the river water. There's a beetle in it. You drink around it. No big deal. You hear a distant clang, and your ears perk up. The blacksmith is working again. You know this because he's the only one loud enough to be mistaken for a minor earthquake. You stretch your aching legs and wonder what he's making. Nails. Horseshoes. Another one of those ridiculous metal helmets no one in your village can afford. Actually, that's a thing, most people in your situation wouldn't even own weapons or armor. That whole idea of every man having a sword. Pure fantasy. You've got a stick and a sharp rock, if that. Even the village militia only gets proper arms if there's a threat from raiders or, heaven forbid, a call to war. Back in the field, you return to work. The sun moves across the sky, and your body slowly melts into a cocktail of pain, heat, and muscle fatigue. You notice your friend John has a splinter the size of a quill sticking out of his thumb. He doesn't stop. No time. Splinters are just life. Infection. That's future John's problem. A bird screeches overhead. You glance up, wiping dirt from your eyes. A hawk, maybe. You imagine what it'd be like to fly away, far from this field, over the hills, past the manor house, beyond the forest. Maybe all the way to London, where you've heard there are taverns, theaters, and people with shoes. Real shoes. With soles and everything. But fantasy won't plant your barley. You shake the daydream off and get back to the hoe. Blisters forming. Lower back aching. Knees already betraying you. Quirky fact of the day, in some medieval farming communities, people believed singing to your crops made them grow better. You give it a shot. Your voice cracks. The barley doesn't care. Neither do the crows, who look mildly insulted. By the time the sun starts to dip, your tunic is soaked with sweat and your hands are raw. You trudge home with a half-empty stomach and a full bag of muscle pain. But you made it. Another day. Another round of medieval endurance. You glance down at your fingers, mud caked into the nail beds, one knuckle starting to swell. You'll deal with it tomorrow. Maybe. Probably not. As you walk through the village, the smell of evening cooking hangs low in the air, burnt onions, cabbage, something vaguely rodent-like. You wave to a few neighbors and get a grunt or nod in return. Everyone's too tired for conversation. You get it. So are you. You reach home, nudge open the door, and drop your tools by the wall. Your family's already huddled around the hearth. A pot bubbles slowly with what might be stew or might be disappointment. Your mother ladles it into wooden bowls. You sit, eat, and try not to think too hard about the mystery meat. Tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all again. Same mud, same sky, same hoe. But tonight, you get to lie down. Sort of. On straw. With the lice. But you'll take it. The fire has gone out overnight, again. You wake shivering, your straw mattress damp with morning dew and the faint scent of mildew thick in your nose. Your neck aches from sleeping at a weird angle, and something, a rat, a sibling, stepped on your ankle while you were dreaming about meat pies and hot baths. Too bad. Those dreams are the closest you'll get to comfort today. You sit up and wince. Your back is furious. Every joint complains. Your mouth is dry, your tongue is fuzzy, and let's not even start with your stomach, which is already growling like a caged bear. But there's no time to coddle your aches, because there's no such thing as a day off. Not for someone like you. You shuffle to the hearth, hoping for embers. No luck. Your youngest brother is using the fire poker as a sword and has left the ashes scattered like yesterday's dreams. You sigh and start piling twigs for a new fire. The flint is stubborn. Your fingers are numb. Smoke stings your eyes before warmth even reaches your skin. Breakfast is whatever's left from yesterday, which, in this case, is some cold porridge scraped from the side of the pot. It's thick, chewy, and mostly made of oat and disappointment. You scrape it into your mouth and try not to think about the small dark bits. Probably burnt crust. Probably. As you eat, your mother mumbles about the chores. Water needs hauling, laundry needs scrubbing, the chickens have disappeared again, and someone has to patch the hole in the roof. Spoiler, that someone is you. Historians still argue whether medieval family roles were strictly divided or more flexible depending on need. In your house, it's all hands on deck, all the time. Gender, age, preference, none of it matters when you've got 4 tasks before breakfast and half a blanket between 5 people. So you head to the well. It's only a quarter mile, but every step is uphill, and your legs are already on strike. The bucket creaks as you dip it in, water sloshing cold over your hands. On the way back, your grip slips and the bucket spills. You stand there for a second, considering whether this is the moment to finally snap and scream into the trees. Instead, you just sigh and go back for more. The path takes you past a cluster of homes. Thatched roofs sag like tired shoulders. Smoke curls lazily from crooked chimneys. Kids run barefoot through the muck, chasing each other with sticks that may or may not be swords. You wave at a few neighbors. They nod back, but no one stops to chat. Everyone's got somewhere to be, something to fix, someone to bury. Social life here is efficient. You save small talk for funerals and feast days. One elderly woman, Marjorie, you think, waves you over. Her face is a map of wrinkles, and she smells like thyme and old goats. She hands you a bundle of herbs and tells you to rub them on your chest. For your cough, she says. Or your bad dreams. Or possibly to keep away spirits. It's unclear. Fringe fact, in some areas, villagers believed hanging wormwood over your bed would keep nightmares away. You're pretty sure it's not working. You return home with the water, slosh some into a basin, and start laundry. No detergent, no spin cycle, no dryer. Just you, cold water, and a flat rock. You smack the linens until your arms go numb. Then you wring them out, hang them on a crooked line, and hope the sun cooperates. Spoiler, it doesn't. It starts raining 10 minutes later. You trudge back inside, dripping and cursing softly under your breath. Your father gives you a look that says, "Stop whining, at least the rain's clean." You give him a look that says, "So is arsenic." Back inside, your sister is sewing. She's using thread she made herself from sheep's wool, which she spun by hand, after carding it with a pair of wooden paddles that might as well be torture devices. She's mending a tunic that's already been patched 6 times. At this point, it's more patched than tunic. You'll be wearing it next week. You try to help, but your stitching is enthusiastic. She gently takes the needle back before you destroy something vital. There's a knock at the door, a rare event. Your mother opens it to reveal Thomas, the village tanner. He smells like every bad decision you've ever made. He's got a bundle of leather for trade and a jug of what might be cider or might be lamp oil. His teeth are worse than yours, which is impressive. Your mother haggles. You watch, fascinated. It's less a negotiation and more a battle of squints and muttered insults. Eventually, they agree, half a bushel of apples and 2 wool mittens for a length of goat hide. Barter economy at its finest. Fun aside, coins do exist, but most rural folk barely see them. Currency is animals, grain, cloth. You don't have a wallet, you have a chicken named Gerald. The rest of the afternoon disappears in a blur of small tasks. You weed the vegetable patch, mostly nettles now, chase down the runaway goat, Gerald again, and haul another round of water. Your arms feel like wet noodles. You step on something sharp, probably a nail, possibly a curse. You mutter a prayer just in case. As the sky darkens, the village begins to settle. You light a tallow candle. It smells like regret and spoiled soup, but it keeps the dark at bay. Sort of. Shadows still creep along the walls. You hear scratching near the thatch. Rats, probably. Or worse. Dinner is more porridge, with a side of sadness. Your brother tries to make a joke. It falls flat. You laugh anyway. It's that or cry. Before bed, you rub the herbs from Marjorie on your chest. They smell sharp, like hope and crushed weeds. You lie down on the straw, pull the patched blanket over your shoulders, and close your eyes. A louse crawls across your cheek. You flick it away. Standard bedtime routine. As sleep creeps in, you wonder, just briefly, what it would be like to live in a world with soft sheets, clean water, medicine, and a mattress that doesn't poke you in 12 places. A place with electricity and actual walls. Then the rain begins again, and the dream drifts away. Morning again. Or is it? It's hard to tell when the sky is the same shade of gray as the inside of your eyelids. Still, the rooster's already screamed his nonsense, and that means one thing: it's time to move your aching bones and face whatever fresh horror the day has for you. Today is market day. Sounds exciting, right? A chance to stretch your legs, maybe swap some onions for something fancier like salted fish or, be still your heart, a chunk of dry cheese. But don't get too excited. You've got to walk 3 miles on a muddy path just to get there, and there's no Uber coming for you, unless you count Gerald the goat, and he's still sulking from yesterday's chase. You tie your cloak, or what passes for one, an old wool sack your aunt turned into a wearable rectangle. The hole for your head is too small, and the smell, well, let's just say wet sheep isn't your best scent. You stuff a few trade items into your basket, a jar of goose fat, a bundle of herbs your sister wrapped in twine, and, your prize, a half-dozen duck eggs, still warm from the coop. You glance at them and silently beg them not to crack. These are your gold bars. Your hope for a better supper. You set off on the road, boots squelching through the mud. The village recedes behind you, replaced by open fields, crooked trees, and the occasional ominous bird. The air smells like wet moss and distant cows. After a mile, your right sock bunches up in your boot. After 2, your hip starts clicking like an old door hinge. By the 3rd, you're composing an angry letter to the concept of gravity. Finally, you arrive. The market is a clearing in front of the church, ringed by carts, crates, and loud people in even louder clothing. The smell hits you first, a pungent cocktail of smoked fish, wet wool, sweat, onions, and something unidentifiable that makes your eyes water. You wander through the crowd, keeping one hand on your basket and one eye on the sketchy man trying to sell miracle bones. You're not falling for that again. Here's a mainstream fact: in many medieval towns, weekly markets were legally sanctioned events. Lords issued charters, sometimes blessed by the king, granting specific rights to hold markets and fairs. It wasn't just tradition, it was a serious part of local economy. Without it, rural folks like you had no access to goods from outside their tiny bubble. You pass a butcher with a stall of questionable meat. Something dark and greasy glistens on a hook. He winks. You clutch your eggs tighter and keep walking. You stop at a cloth vendor, he's got actual dyed linen, in blue no less. But one glance at the price and you know it might as well be made of unicorn mane. Still, you run your hand over it. Smooth. Clean. No lice. You sigh and move on. You trade your herbs for a small pouch of salt. Your mother will be thrilled, it's the only thing that makes boiled cabbage vaguely tolerable. The goose fat goes for a handful of dried peas and a small round of rye bread. Not bad. Then, tragedy strikes. One of your eggs cracks. Not just a little. Full yolk explosion. You stare at it like it personally insulted your lineage. The trader you're bartering with, an old woman who looks like she was born during a thunderstorm, shakes her head. 2 eggs now, she says. You want to argue. You really do. But you don't speak fluent haggling, and she's already pocketed the remaining egg. Historians still argue whether markets were places of genuine community bonding or quiet, bubbling resentment. Based on today's vibe, definitely the latter. But there's also music, someone's playing a lute badly, and a man with no teeth is singing a song about turnip theft. Children chase each other between stalls, and someone's goat has broken loose, causing mild chaos near the pottery cart. It's a scene. A loud, muddy, moderately terrifying scene. You spot a man selling books. Real books. You freeze, drawn like a moth to parchment. Of course, you can't read. But still. The leather cover, the intricate illustrations, the smell of ink, it feels like magic. You hover awkwardly, until the bookseller shoos you away. You nod like you meant to leave anyway. Quirky fact, in some market towns, people hired criers to read letters aloud for the illiterate. Want to know what your cousin in York is up to? Pay a guy with a loud voice and hope he doesn't mock you mid-sentence. As the sun climbs higher, the crowd begins to thin. People pack their goods, count their coins, and herd their children and animals. You nibble the heel of your bread and sip from a shared mug of weak ale. It tastes like someone whispered beer over a bucket of river water, but it's something. On the way out, you spot a man selling charms. Wooden trinkets, bits of ribbon, tiny bags of dirt. He swears they protect against evil humors and night vapors. He leans in, lowers his voice, and offers you a special amulet, a dried frog sewn into a pouch. Guaranteed to keep fevers away. You raise an eyebrow. He adds, and flees. You consider it for a long moment before handing him your last pea. You walk home with sore feet, a bruised ego, and a frog in your pocket. The sky begins to darken. Not with night, yet, but with clouds. A soft rumble overhead. You pick up your pace. Just as your village peeks into view over the hill, the heavens open. You arrive soaked, again, trailing muddy footprints into the hut. Your mother takes one look at you and the handful of peas you offer and says, "At least you didn't lose the salt." You don't tell her about the frog. That's between you and the pocket gods now. You help with supper, stirring the pot, feeding the fire, and drying your cloak by the hearth. The food is simple but hot, and tonight, there's even a sliver of cheese, traded from someone else who had better luck haggling. You chew slowly, savoring each crumb like it's spun gold. As the fire burns low, you tuck your new amulet under your straw and curl into the warmth. Your body aches, your fingers still smell like fish, and your one remaining egg is already developing a suspicious odor. But you've survived another market day. And in the Middle Ages, that's a win. You wake in the middle of the night to the distant clang of a bell and the unmistakable murmurs of panic. For a moment, you're not sure if you're dreaming. Then your mother rushes past, shawl half on, muttering, "Fire at the mill." You stumble up, blanket wrapped around your legs, and peer out the narrow opening that dares to call itself a window. Smoke curls over the treetops like a dark snake. The air smells thick, burning timber, scorched grain, fear. The mill's gone up before, years ago. They say it was lightning that time. Or a drunk with a torch. Historians still argue whether village fires in the medieval period were mostly accidental or acts of sabotage. Either way, everything's flammable, and fire is always hungry. You throw on your tunic, still damp from yesterday, and follow the trail of shouting. The village is a flickering tableau of figures running in the dark, some with buckets, others with sheer panic. You join the bucket line automatically, hands moving, eyes wide, half awake but completely alert. Water sloshes. Embers spark. Somewhere, someone wails. The fire is losing now, but not before it's licked half the mill into cinders. A wheel breaks off and crashes into the stream, where it hisses like an angry cat. The crowd begins to murmur in that low, stunned way that means, well, there goes winter. The mill was the village's heartbeat. Without it, grain goes unground. Bread becomes a luxury. And as you stand there, soaked in ash and anxiety, you realize, your stomach doesn't care that the mill's gone. It's still hungry. By sunrise, the fire's out. The building is toast, literally. Charred beams poke up like broken ribs. People gather silently, staring at what was once their lifeline. No one speaks for a while. Then the arguments begin. Some blame the miller. Some blame the tanner, because let's face it, he's suspicious. Others mutter about curses. A few recall the strange stranger who passed through last week with no shadow. It couldn't have been just sparks and dry timber, right? Fringe belief: in many medieval communities, unexplained fires were attributed to sin, witches, or divine punishment. It's never just bad luck. It's always a sign. You trudge back home, every muscle vibrating with fatigue. Your clothes reek of smoke, and your hands are blistered from the buckets. Still, there's no rest. The animals need feeding. The roof is leaking again. And your brother has stepped on Gerald's tail, starting yet another goat-based feud. After a meager breakfast of soggy bread and pickled something, you head off to help with repairs elsewhere in the village. That's what people do here. Tragedy is communal. So is the cleanup. You spend the morning hauling timber, tearing down scorched walls, and trying not to inhale more ash. The smith offers a strip of cloth soaked in vinegar to tie over your nose. Keeps the fire demons out, he says. You nod solemnly and accept it. Whether it's true or not, it smells better than everything else. By midday, your arms feel like they belong to someone else, someone clumsier, possibly with jelly for bones. But there's no quitting. You're handed a basket and told to help collect whatever grain survived the fire. You crouch near the wreckage, picking through blackened debris. The grain is scorched, sure, but maybe salvageable. At least, that's what the old farmer says as he holds up a handful and squints. You doubt it, but say nothing. Hope's a fragile thing here. At some point, a group of men begins to dig a trench for a new water channel, an ambitious plan to redirect the stream and rebuild the mill elsewhere. It sounds ridiculous. Like building a cathedral out of turnips. But everyone nods along. Because what else can you do? You take a break by the stream, hands in the cold water, eyes closed. A breeze carries the scent of firewood and herbs. Somewhere upriver, a child is singing a song about an eel that swallowed a ring. It makes no sense, but the melody is oddly comforting. Back at home, the talk is all about the rebuilding effort. Your mother is sewing faster than usual, making sacks and cloaks to trade for wood. Your father sharpens tools. Your sister has taken it upon herself to draw a new plan for the mill, on bark, using charcoal. It's just a few scribbles, but everyone treats it like a blueprint from heaven. You help where you can. That night, by candlelight, you sit beside your brother as he carves pegs for joining beams. You hand him scraps. Neither of you talks. There's just the steady sound of blade on wood and the occasional pop from the hearth. Later, you hear someone praying softly in the corner. Not to any saint you recognize. Just a murmur, a plea, a quiet hope for protection from more flames. You join in without thinking. Mainstream fact: most medieval peasants practiced a blend of official Christian rituals and lingering pagan traditions. The line between saint and spirit was blurrier than modern historians like to admit. As night deepens, the sky clears. Stars blink down through the thatch. You lie on your straw mattress, the frog amulet under your cheek, your hair still smelling faintly of smoke. You think of the mill. Of fire. Of rebuilding. Of how fast life turns. One day you're bartering eggs, the next, you're digging through ash for dinner. You don't feel heroic. You just feel tired. But you're still here. And here, that counts. You sleep late the next morning, though late, in medieval terms, still means before the dew dries. No bells ring today. No mill churns. The village has a strange hush, like everyone's holding their breath. You sit up slowly, joints clicking like old hinges, and inhale the soft, sour scent of damp wool and burnt ash lingering from yesterday's disaster. Outside, the world's wet again. It rained sometime in the night, not enough to flood, but enough to turn the lanes into a mud ballet. You squelch toward the communal well with a bucket and a sigh, dodging the smith's goose who hisses at your ankles like it personally holds a grudge. Water's cold. You splash some on your face and try not to scream. No soap, no toothpaste, just icy water and a handful of mint leaves if you're lucky. Hygiene is, let's say, minimal. You scrub your armpits with a wool rag, check for lice, they're still winning, and call it a day. You might think bathing happens regularly here. Nope. Unless you're rich or unusually lucky, full-body washing is reserved for special occasions, weddings, funerals, or the once-a-season communal bathhouse visit that usually ends with someone catching a rash. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly feared water as unhealthy or if the issue was just logistical. Wood was scarce, privacy scarcer, and hot water a full-blown luxury. Back home, your sister is combing her hair with what looks like a broken fork, while your mother smears a salve made from goose fat and lavender on her feet. Keeps the skin from cracking, she says, and hands you the pot. You eye it, remembering it was also used yesterday to grease the wagon axle. But hey, dual purpose. Here's a fun fringe detail. In 14th century England, a popular belief held that washing your face too often weakened the eyes. So naturally, you don't risk it. You rub dirt off with dirt. Perfect logic. Clothes. Still the same. You rotate between two tunics, both the color of sadness. Underwear is optional. Woolen hose hang from your hips with a drawstring so fragile it could snap if you breathe too hard. You tighten it anyway and hope for the best. Meals are simple today. Porridge again, barley, this time, with a sprinkle of last week's dried berries. You chew slowly, staring at the wall, thinking this might be what eternity feels like. Your brother adds a bit of honey he stole, borrowed, from the Reeve storehouse. No one tells. Everyone just nods in silent approval. The Reeve overcharges anyway. With the mill gone and the village in partial disarray, you're assigned a new chore, gathering firewood. You grab a dull hatchet and trudge toward the woods, already imagining the blisters. The forest is quiet, apart from the occasional crow and the rustle of leaves. You work in silence, hacking at fallen branches, collecting kindling, watching the beetles scurry from the light. It's oddly peaceful, until you remember that bandits sometimes lurk on this side of the hill. You grip your hatchet tighter. It's more rust than blade, but it might give someone tetanus if thrown with enough force. By midday, you return with a bundle of sticks lashed to your back like a poorly made scarecrow. You smell like bark, your arms itch, and your stomach's already growling again. At least no one tried to rob you. That's a win. You help patch the roof next. Someone's hut lost half its thatch in the storm. That means climbing a rickety ladder while holding straw bundles and praying your foot doesn't slip into pig dung. It's slow, scratchy work. But at the top, you catch a glimpse of something lovely, the horizon, flat and golden with wheat, dotted with clouds that look like lazy ghosts. And just for a moment, you breathe. The village below is still smoking in places, still broken, but life continues. Children chase chickens, a woman scolds her husband, someone singing off-key. Chaos and comfort, blended together. Mainstream fact, even after disasters, medieval communities showed remarkable resilience. People rebuilt fast, using whatever was at hand. And often, they sang while they worked, not because they were joyful, but because rhythm helped with pacing and mood. Misery loves music. That night, your legs are jelly, your back is on strike, and your fingertips are speckled with splinters. Supper is a thin soup with questionable chunks, maybe turnip, maybe not, but it's hot, and that's enough. You blow on the spoon, close your eyes, and pretend it's stew. Your uncle arrives during dinner. He smells like smoke and has soot in his beard. He worked all day hauling stones from the riverbed for the new mill foundation. 3 more weeks, he says, if the weather holds. Everyone nods. No one believes it. Later, before sleep, you help your sister pick lice from her hair. It's weirdly intimate, like bonding through shared misery. You squint at her scalp in the candlelight, flicking bugs into the fire. She hums a song about a knight who got eaten by a bear. You both laugh, even though you know it probably happened. And just before bed, your mother hands you a new charm, a scrap of parchment with a crude drawing of a rooster. To keep away bad dreams, she says. Or at least nightmares about cheese. You don't ask. You curl beneath your scratchy blanket, listening to the wind scrape against the walls. You are tired, sore, maybe still a little hungry. But you're alive, and no one's on fire. That's progress. As your eyes close, you think about your day, the mud, the chores, the small comforts like honey on porridge or singing on the roof. You realize something strange. You're adapting. You're still not thriving, not even close. But somehow, you're making it. Which is impressive, considering the hygiene alone could have taken you out by now. Morning brings a low mist and the metallic cry of a rooster that sounds like it's had a rough night. You wake up to the usual, a sore back, the tang of mildew in the air, and your little brother trying to peel a tick off his ankle with a fork. So far, you've survived lice, smoke, starvation by porridge, and medieval fashion. But today? Today brings a whole new trial, medieval justice. Your neighbor's cow has gone missing. Again. And naturally, the blame falls on the boy with the lazy eye and unfortunate timing who happened to be nearby with a suspiciously clean shovel. He swears he didn't do it, claims he saw the cow wander off toward the woods, but no one believes him. Mostly because last year he got caught sneaking eggs from the Reeves henhouse, and in a village like this, your sins stick longer than tar on sandals. So now, you're summoned, along with the entire adult population of the village, to the green in front of the church. This is where justice is served, medieval style, with a generous helping of superstition and, occasionally, hot iron. The reeve, the priest, and the Lord Steward gather at the front, all solemn in their cloaks. Everyone else stands around like it's a slightly hostile town meeting. The boy trembles beside a barrel of cabbage, which seems fitting, because he's about to be metaphorically boiled. They say he'll face a trial by congregation, swearing an oath of innocence, backed by others who vouch for his character. Trouble is, he's not particularly popular. And his only friend moved away after the latrine incident. You'd help him, but frankly, you've got your own problems, and you really don't want to be accused of cow theft by association. Mainstream fact: in many medieval villages, minor crimes were judged not by a legal code, but by tradition and community consensus. Trials could involve swearing oaths, ordeal by water, or simply being too unpopular to avoid punishment. In this case, the reeve decides to go old school. "We'll let God decide," he says, which is never a good sign. The trial of ordeal is back in fashion. Specifically, ordeal by hot iron. The crowd parts like soup around a spoon. A small iron bar is pulled from the forge, glowing red. The test? The boy must carry the iron a short distance, just 3 paces, and then have his hand bandaged. After 3 days, they'll check. If it's healing cleanly, he's innocent. If not, well. Enjoy the stocks. You shift uncomfortably. This seems less about justice and more about medieval gambling. The boy steps forward. His face is pale as goat's milk. He lifts the iron. You wince. He walks. He drops it. It hisses in the grass. The priest mutters a prayer. Then someone wraps his hand in a mixture of herbs and old linen, and the wait begins. You return home shaken. Not because you think he did it, but because you know next time it could be you. For anything. Stealing apples. Looking at someone wrong. Having a mole in the wrong spot. Fringe tidbit: in parts of Europe, moles were considered witch marks, especially if they were oddly shaped. Good luck explaining birthmarks to a torch-wielding mob. Later that day, your father sends you to town with a message for the tanner. The walk is long, muddy, and punctuated by the smell of decomposing leather and something truly unidentifiable. But the tanner's wife gives you a heel of bread dipped in animal fat, which you devour like it's a roast feast. On your way back, you pass the manor house. The steward is there, inspecting the new wall being built around the sheep pens. He spots you and waves you over. "You," he says. "Can you read?" You freeze. "Do you tell the truth?" "Sort of." "You've seen a few letters. You can maybe recognize your name if it's written really big and slowly." But you nod. Because saying no means missing a potential opportunity, or worse, being volunteered for manure duty. He hands you a scroll. "Take this to the priest. Don't open it." So naturally, you wait until you're out of sight and then immediately crack the seal. It's mostly squiggles, but you catch the word tithe and arrears. Something about the villagers owing more grain than they gave. Wonderful. Just what everyone needs, more taxes. Historians still debate whether medieval taxes were mostly fair or purely extortion with a fancy cross. From your perspective, it's clearly the latter. By the time you get home, the sky has dimmed and your feet are soaked. You're greeted by your sister yelling about a chicken that refuses to come down from the rafters and a mother who's decided you should sleep in the storage loft tonight to make room for Aunt Beatrix and her astonishingly loud snoring. But none of that compares to what happens the next morning. The boy. The one with the hot iron. His bandage was removed at dawn. His hand, clean. No infection. Barely a blister. God has spoken, the priest says. The crowd gasps. The Reeve frowns. You blink. Even the boy looks surprised. There's a moment of silence. Then the old woman who sells carrots says, maybe it wasn't him after all. The boy is forgiven. Sort of. People still give him side eyes, but at least he's not missing a hand. You watch him shuffle away, cradling his arm. He nods at you. And for a moment, just a blink, you feel the weight of it, how fragile innocence is in a world like this. How one wrong look, one angry neighbor, one lost cow, can shift the balance. Still, the justice system has spoken. Or at least, burned a hole in someone until they got lucky. That night, as you lie in the loft between sacks of lentils and someone's boots, you think about the hot iron. The priest's solemn face. The scroll in your bag with the word arrears. You wonder how many others didn't get so lucky. How many truths were burned away by fire. You fall asleep not with dreams, but with questions. Because here, justice is just another form of survival. And you're still surviving. You wake before the rooster, startled by the cold nose of a rat sniffing your foot. It scurries off before you can swat it, disappearing into the shadows beneath a stack of firewood. The loft is still dark, the air thick with the must of onions and wool. You roll over, wishing desperately for 10 more minutes of peace, but the sun has started to crawl over the fields, and in medieval life, sleep is something you borrow, not own. Downstairs, Aunt Beatrix is already up, crushing something foul-smelling with a pestle and muttering about her elixirs. You pretend not to hear. Your mother hands you a hunk of bread that could double as a weapon and tells you the hay needs turning, again. You sigh, pocket a few dried apples, and head out to the barn. The hay is damp and slightly moldy. You grab a pitchfork and begin to flip it in the morning sun, trying not to sneeze. Your arms ache, your back groans, and the splinters in your palms sting with every lift. It's thankless, repetitive work, but it has to be done, or the cows will eat rot and fart themselves to death. Yes, that's a thing. Around midday, you're interrupted by the sound of hooves. A rider approaches, not the village reeve, but a courier from the nearby monastery. His cloak is rich burgundy, his boots real leather, and he smells suspiciously clean. Everyone stops to watch as he dismounts, his expression grave. He brings news. The abbot has died. Not killed. Not burned. Just old age. But in these times, that alone is shocking. Mainstream fact, most people in medieval Europe never lived past their early 40s. Nobles fared slightly better, but monks, thanks to stable food, clean water, and a life free from plowing, could live into their 60s or even 70s. Unless, of course, they were poisoned, which historians still argue might have happened more often than records admit. The abbot's death triggers a ripple of change. The monastery, once peaceful and self-contained, now opens its gates to visiting clergy and curious peasants hoping for free bread or a glimpse of sacred relics. Your village is expected to send workers to help prepare the funeral, and guess who's volunteered? That's right. You. You set off on foot with a handful of others, your father, 2 neighbors, and the boy who survived the hot iron trial, now wearing a bandage like a badge of honor. The monastery lies 5 miles away, across muddy fields and a stream that tries to eat your shoes. The building is enormous, made of stone and dreams. You've never seen so much glass in your life, tiny, colored panes set high in arched windows that glow like melted jewels in the sunlight. The courtyard smells of rosemary and parchment, a strange but pleasant change from manure and damp socks. The monks greet you with nods. Silent ones, mostly. Some take vows of silence, others just don't want to talk to you. You're handed a broom and directed toward the guest cloister. You sweep in silence, marveling at how everything here feels slower, softer, like the outside world has been muffled by prayer. The corridors echo. The stones underfoot are cool and smooth, worn by centuries of sandal soles. You catch sight of a monk copying a manuscript by candlelight, his quill moving like it's dancing. Fringe tidbit: in some monasteries, monks added doodles and snarky marginalia to their manuscripts, tiny drawings of rabbits jousting or saints with exaggerated halos. Proof that even in solemn silence, people still got bored. You're given a simple meal in the refectory: lentil stew, bread, and, unbelievably, cheese. Real cheese. You nearly cry. No one talks during the meal. Instead, a monk stands on a raised platform and reads aloud from scripture in Latin, which you don't understand but pretend to absorb thoughtfully. After lunch, you help dig the grave. It's not glamorous. It's not spiritual. It's just digging. The ground is rocky and uncooperative. Your hands blister. Your sweat soaks your tunic. And through it all, a bell tolls every hour, a reminder of mortality and devotion, or maybe just a really loud clock. That evening, you're allowed to sleep in the guest hall. The bedding is straw, but clean. The candlelight is soft. You lie there, staring at the vaulted ceiling, wondering what it would be like to live here, among the books and beeswax and silence. It seems peaceful, almost sacred. But there's a catch. To become a monk, you'd have to give up family. Friends. Meet. Talking. Laughing at your sister when she steps in goose poop. You trade chaos for calm, but also for a kind of stillness that might feel like being slowly buried. Historians still debate whether monastic life was truly fulfilling or just a medieval version of early retirement, trading suffering for structure, uncertainty for silence. You fall asleep with that question buzzing in your mind. The next morning, the funeral is held. It's quiet, solemn, filled with Latin you still don't understand. Incense chokes the air. The abbot is lowered into the ground by 6 monks who look like ghosts in white robes. No one cries. At least not out loud. You return to your village with sore arms and an odd sense of calm. Life is loud, dirty, and unfair, but for a brief moment, you stood inside something that felt timeless. Then your sister throws a potato at you for eating her apple, and the spell is broken. You're back. And life continues. The morning after the funeral, you're back in your village, surrounded by the all-too-familiar chaos. Someone's goat is eating laundry again, a neighbor's child has a nosebleed from mysterious causes, and your mother is in the middle of arguing with the baker about whether he shorted her a quarter loaf. No monks, no candlelit Latin hymns, just mud, smoke, and shouting. You're sent to fetch water from the village well. Again. Your shoulders sag. That well has seen more of you than your own bed. It's surrounded by rutted dirt and discarded chicken feathers, and the rope is worn so thin you half expect it to snap mid-haul and plunge your bucket to a watery grave. You reach the well just as two others arrive, a miller's daughter with sunburned cheeks and a man from the next hamlet over, who gives you a nod and a suspiciously cheerful grin. The mood shifts when someone mentions the king's tax collector is rumored to be making the rounds. Ah, taxes. Everyone's favorite part of the medieval experience. Mainstream fact: in feudal societies, peasants owed a dizzying array of taxes. There were tithes to the church, rents to the local lord, labor obligations, market tolls, and sometimes even taxes for using ovens or mills. You could be taxed for breathing wrong if someone was feeling particularly ambitious that day. By noon, the rumor proves true. A man rides into the village on a horse so clean it looks imported from another reality. He's flanked by two guards, each carrying spears and wearing expressions that say, "Don't ask us anything." The tax collector himself wears velvet sleeves and a feathered cap, because of course he does. He dismounts like a man used to applause and announces that it's time to reassess holdings and ensure appropriate tribute. Translation: he's here to squeeze the villagers until they rattle. Your father tightens his jaw. Last season's harvest was mediocre at best, and the last thing your family needs is another levy. The collector goes from house to house, asking pointed questions and scribbling furiously in a small ledger. You watch as the shoemaker's wife argues about the number of chickens they own, only to be fined for obstructive attitude. The system feels less like taxation and more like medieval performance art. You keep your head down and hope to avoid notice, but then, of course, the collector reaches your doorstep. Your name, he asks, not because he wants to know, but because it makes things sound official. Your father answers. The man sniffs and glances at your house with barely disguised contempt. 3 adults, 2 children, a goat, a pig, any apprentices? No, your father says. Only mouths to feed. The tax collector writes "unproductive" next to your name. You resist the urge to throw a turnip at him. Later that evening, as the sun sinks into the horizon like a tired coin, the village gathers in the square for a much-needed distraction. A traveling entertainer has arrived. Word spreads fast: music, laughter, maybe even juggling. It's better than taxes, so everyone shows up, even the widow who never leaves her cottage unless it's on fire. The performer is a lean man in patchwork clothes, with a lute slung across his back and an accent from somewhere no one can place. He sings songs of far-off lands, knights and dragons, beautiful maidens and cursed gold. His voice lilts like the wind over barley, and for a little while, everyone forgets their sore feet and unpaid debts. Fringe tidbit: medieval entertainers, minstrels, jongleur, and troubadours, were often part musician, part spy. Some traveled under noble patronage, gathering rumors and political secrets in their verses. Others were just trying to eat without plowing fields. He finishes with a tale about a talking fox who outwits a greedy priest, which earns more than a few sideways glances and snorts of laughter. You laugh too, maybe a little too loud, and feel your ribs ache from the effort. As the crowd begins to disperse, he passes around a battered hat. Coins clink in. Your father drops in a single copper. You offer a piece of dried plum. The minstrel grins like it's gold. As he packs up, he catches your eye. Ever thought of leaving? He asks. Seeing the world? You blink. No one asks you that. No one even talks about leaving. People are born here, they toil here, and they die here. The idea of going somewhere else, somewhere with cities, towers, ocean ports, silk, and spices, is like hearing someone casually mention flying. I wouldn't last a day, you mumble. Maybe, he says, and winks. But maybe you'd last too. The thought lingers. Historians still argue whether most medieval people felt trapped in their villages or simply accepted their lot with a kind of bone-deep pragmatism. You suspect it's a bit of both. Some days you dream of castles and ships. Other days, you just want a hot bath and for the pig to stop chewing your boots. That night, you lie in bed and replay the songs in your head. Your ears still hum with the strum of lute strings. You picture cities you've never seen, islands whose names you can't pronounce. Then the wind howls outside, your sister kicks you in her sleep, and the pig snorts from its corner. Maybe one day you'll leave. Maybe. But for now, you sleep in the only bed you've ever known. And dream beyond it. You wake to screaming. Not the fun kind, like, breakfast is ready, or, the fair is in town. No, this is the dreadful kind, sharp, ragged, and very, very human. You bolt upright, heart racing, and rush outside with the rest of the village to find a boy, no older than your youngest cousin, writhing on the ground, his body seized in violent spasms. His mother clutches at him, sobbing. No one touches them. Someone whispers the word you've been dreading all year, plague. Mainstream fact, epidemics were a recurring nightmare in the Middle Ages. The most infamous, of course, was the Black Death, which swept through Europe in the mid-14th century and killed an estimated one-third of the population. But there were smaller outbreaks, too, localized flare-ups of bubonic plague, typhoid, dysentery, or the ominously vague, sweating sickness. The boy's father backs away, pale as lard, and the village reeve makes the call. They're to be quarantined, immediately. The family is dragged to a tiny, unused hut at the edge of the fields, their pleas swallowed by the wind. You watch all this in stunned silence, hands shaking. Your mother shoves a cloth soaked in vinegar into your palm and tells you to breathe through it. It keeps the evil vapors away, she says. Fringe tidbit, in plague times, people carried nosegays, bundles of herbs or flowers, believing pleasant smells could protect them from disease. Some wore hollowed-out oranges filled with cloves. Others went full-beak doctor, though that was mostly in cities. In rural villages, it was more like, try not to die and hope for the best. The village immediately goes into panic mode. No one knows what it is yet, if it is the plague, if it's bad food, or maybe something darker. Historians still argue whether villagers truly understood contagion or if they viewed outbreaks more as divine punishment than scientific cause and effect. Either way, the result is the same: fear, suspicion, and isolation. Your father boards up the windows. The local priest fasts and prays so hard he faints. The baker refuses to touch coins, passing loaves to customers with a long stick. Everyone becomes a little less neighborly and a lot more paranoid. Daily life now revolves around avoiding everything. You stop going to the well and start boiling rainwater. You eat only what's in the pantry. You scrub your hands with lye soap until they crack and sting. The smallest cough sends icy shivers down spines. And through it all, the boy in the hut screams, less now, and more faintly. One morning, there's only silence. A few brave men, masked in rags and soaked in vinegar, carry the body away. No funeral. No prayers. Just a shallow grave near the forest edge, and the quickly tamped down horror in everyone's eyes. Life tries to continue. That's what people do, right? Survive. Move forward. Pretend yesterday didn't happen. But things aren't normal. The village begins to shrink. A baby dies in the night. An old woman is found collapsed in her garden. A family leaves without warning, their door swinging open in the wind. You go to sleep each night wondering who'll vanish next. You take on new chores, not because you want to, but because others can't. You fetch firewood, tend to the animals, even help mend clothing after the seamstress takes ill. You're busier than ever, but strangely, you feel stronger. There's a moment, brief, like a flicker, when you realize you haven't thought about your aching feet or your grumbling stomach. You've been too focused on keeping people alive. One afternoon, a strange wagon rolls into town. It's covered in waxed cloth, pulled by two wheezing oxen, and driven by a gaunt woman with sharp eyes and a red scarf over her mouth. She calls herself a plague sister, a wandering healer of sorts. Not a nun, not a doctor, just someone who's seen 100 sick villages and lived to tell about it. She sets up shop near the church, refusing to enter homes but allowing people to come to her. She smells of sage and garlic and something smoky, like dried nettles over fire. Your mother takes you there for a tonic, foul, brown, and bubbling. You drink it anyway. The woman teaches basic care: boil linens, burn the bedding of the dead, avoid touching the face. She even shows you how to make a rudimentary salve from juniper berries and pig fat. Gross. Yes. Useful. Also yes. Fringe tidbit: wise women like her were common across medieval Europe, often feared as witches but quietly relied on during crisis. Some had real knowledge of herbs and healing, passed down through generations. Others just had charisma and a good poker face. After a week, the strange woman leaves, just as suddenly as she came, vanishing down the road with nothing but a soft, good luck, and a bell tied to her ox cart. And things start to improve. No new deaths. No fresh screams. Just silence. The fear lingers, but so does something else: resilience. You've all been through something terrible. Not everyone made it. But you did. Somehow. By vinegar cloth and boiled socks and sheer dumb luck, you're still here. Your family starts planting again. The baker smiles at you. The priest gives a sermon about survival being a kind of prayer. And when you look in the water bucket and see your reflection, there's something new in your eyes: tired, yes, but also steady. You're still afraid. You're still hungry. You still smell like goat. But you're alive. And in the Middle Ages, that's more than most can ask for. It's the first truly warm day of spring when the messenger arrives: mud-caked boots, a torn tunic, and a scroll sealed with red wax clenched tightly in one hand. He barely makes it past the village cross before collapsing in a heap, much to the alarm of a nearby flock of chickens and one elderly weaver who drops her spindle in fright. When revived with water and bread crusts, the man wheezes out his news: the king is calling men to arms. You blink, unsure if you've heard right. Then the whispers start, fast, urgent, rippling through the village like a chill. There's talk of war with the French. Or maybe a border rebellion. Or maybe pirates. It's always pirates. Mainstream fact: Throughout the Middle Ages, European monarchs frequently levied feudal levies, summoning able-bodied men from their vassals' lands to form armies. Service might last for a season or a specific campaign, and while some trained knights were involved, most troops were poorly equipped peasants armed with whatever pointy stick they could find. Your village isn't special. You owe your labor and loyalty to your local lord, who in turn owes it to someone else, all the way up to the king, kind of like a deadly pyramid scheme. Within a day, a crude list is posted. Names scrawled in shaky ink, dried by wind and fear. Your father is too old, your brother too young. But you're just right. Right enough to be useful. Right enough to be sent. The next few days pass in a strange blur. You're given a spear so dull it might be better suited for flipping pancakes. A padded vest is found for you, reeking of damp straw and regret. And someone hands you an iron helmet that seems permanently tilted to the left. You're told very little. March north. Follow the banners. Report to the steward of Lord something or other. Fight when told. Try not to die. You don't sleep much that night. Not just because of the nerves, but also because the goat chooses this exact moment in your life to chew through the strap of your pack. Morning comes too soon. You kiss your mother goodbye. Your father claps your shoulder with something between pride and dread. And just like that, you're off, on foot, with 5 other unlucky villagers, trailing behind a horse that seems personally offended by your existence. The journey is long, mostly uncomfortable, and deeply muddy. You sleep in haylofts, barns, and once, on a suspiciously warm rock. You eat dried peas and hard biscuits that double as building materials. The road is crowded with others just like you, nervous men in patched tunics, sharpening old knives, muttering prayers and curses in equal measure. Fringe tidbit: medieval armies often functioned like chaotic traveling carnivals. Vendors followed behind selling meat pies, prostitutes wandered between tents, and everyone constantly argued about whose ox cart was blocking the path. Discipline varied wildly, especially among the untrained. When you finally arrive at the mustering ground, you're overwhelmed. Tents stretch for miles. Smoke from dozens of campfires curls into the air. Banners whip in the wind, red, gold, black, each bearing symbols you don't recognize. There are horses everywhere, and people shouting in at least 3 languages. You're given a new assignment: dig trenches. Not glorious, not heroic, but necessary. So you dig, with a shovel as heavy as guilt, next to a grumbling man named What who claims he once ate a hedgehog to survive winter. The talk around the fire at night ranges from nonsense to terror. No one really knows when the fighting starts. Or why. Or how long it'll last. We're pawns, what says, tossing a bone into the grass. Just mud-covered meat with legs. Then the drums come. One morning, you're woken by horns and shouting. You're handed a shield. Told to line up. Told to walk. Then run. Then stand still. Then shout. The orders blur, and suddenly, there's another army in the distance, armor glinting like angry mirrors, flags rippling like teeth. Historians still argue whether the average medieval soldier understood strategy or simply followed orders and hoped the people in front of them would die first. From your perspective, it's more chaos than chess. The noise is unbearable. The sky fills with arrows. You charge. You trip. You scream. You swing your spear like a man trying to shoo a bear with a broomstick. Someone beside you falls. You don't look to see who. Then it's over. Not the war. Just the moment. The retreat is called. Someone is missing a boot. Someone else is missing a finger. You're shaking, soaked in something that might be blood, might be wine, might be stew. You sit down and cry without even knowing why. Later, in the flickering light of a campfire, you clean your weapon and stare into the flames. What tells a joke about a priest, a nun, and a leper? You don't laugh, but your mouth twitches. Fringe tidbit: some medieval battles had a no loot, no food policy. After fighting, soldiers were often expected to scavenge supplies from the dead, leading to deeply awkward moral questions and very hasty inventory decisions. Eventually, the campaign ends, not with victory or glory, but with rain. Endless, sideways rain. Disease spreads faster than rumors, and both armies begin to melt away like wet parchment. You're sent home with a blister on your foot, a dented helmet, and a pouch of coins that jingle like apologies. You've survived war, somehow. Barely. When you reach your village weeks later, thinner and quieter than before, no one cheers. Your mother hugs you. Your father pours you ale. The goat pretends not to recognize you. You lie down in your own bed. And for the first time in months, you dream of something quiet. You sleep for 2 days straight. Your mother insists on it, bringing you broth, bread, and a rotating selection of herbs that all smell faintly of moss and goat breath. Your limbs ache like they've been borrowed from someone older. You have dreams, mud, arrows, distant trumpets, but when you wake, the house is warm, and the only marching comes from your younger cousin trying to herd ducks in the yard. You survived your first war. And now, somehow, life just goes back to normal. Or tries to. Except now, you're not just another farmhand. You're the one who went. Children look at you like you wrestled a dragon. Old men nod at you, as if you've passed a test you never signed up for. Your friends expect stories, but you don't have many you want to tell. Turns out, I watched a man die face down in stew doesn't quite delight at dinner. So you return to the familiar rhythms. Mending fences. Mucking stables. Chasing geese with sticks because geese, as everyone knows, are demons in feathered form. But something's different. You don't flinch at thunder anymore. You don't complain when the bread is stale. And you find yourself scanning the horizon, always half waiting for more bad news. Mainstream fact: for medieval peasants, the return from war meant more work, not less. Fields still needed tending, taxes still needed paying, and there were no medals or parades. Just calloused hands and bills to settle. Summer bleeds into autumn, and you're soon caught in the harvest rush. Everyone is. Even the village priest rolls up his sleeves and helps beat the barley. You find a strange comfort in the routine, sweating under a sky smeared with gold, arms sore, back burning, but the grain piling high. Life is hard, but predictable again. Then one morning, a letter arrives from the manor. You're summoned. You check the seal twice to be sure it's not a prank. You've only seen the lord of your manor once, from a distance, on horseback, cloaked in so much velvet he resembled a walking tapestry. But the letter is real. Crisp parchment. Wax seal. Your name spelled correctly, a rarity in itself. Your family watches you dress like they're sending you off to be hanged. You put on your cleanest tunic, tuck your shirt properly for once, and walk the path toward the manor house, trying not to trip over your own dignity. The manor looms like a dream, stone walls, carved arches, and more windows than anyone really needs. A steward with a nose like a bird leads you through high-ceilinged halls and into a chamber that smells of ink and rosemary. The Lord greets you without rising. He's pale, sharp-eyed, and draped in furs. Behind him, a scribe scratches endlessly at parchment. He's heard of your service, he says. The village spoke well of you. Even your trench digging made an impression. He needs reliable men now. Literate ones, if possible. You inform him, somewhat proudly, that you can write your name and almost read the Bible. He nods. You are now an assistant steward. You almost ask if that comes with boots. Fringe tidbit, many medieval stewards came from lower-ranking peasant stock, especially as clerks or assistants. A little literacy and a lot of loyalty could earn you a surprising promotion, even if you still slept in a hay-filled corner. Your new role begins the next day. You learn to track livestock, count sacks of grain, and very awkwardly handle disputes over hedges, chickens, and who accidentally flooded whose outhouse. You attend tax collections and try not to look smug when others call you, sir, even if they say it like they're swallowing nettles. But power is slippery. You're now the middleman between the people you grew up with and the man who owns everything. One day you're writing inventory lists, the next you're explaining why the Lord is raising rent because his third cousin wants new drapes. And suddenly, those admiring village stares feel different, colder, sharper. Historians still argue whether medieval social mobility was truly possible or just an illusion dangled in front of obedient peasants. For every rags to riches story, there are 100 forgotten names buried under mud and taxes. You try to be fair. You sneak an extra loaf to the widow down the lane. You turn a blind eye when old Fergus steals apples. You even help repair the weaver's roof with leftover manor timber. But rumors swirl. People talk. And soon, you're not the one who went to war. You're the Lord's lapdog. It stings. One night, you sit under the stars, feet sore, brain buzzing with numbers and names. You remember the battlefield, the mud, the noise. You remember digging trenches and choking on stew. And somehow, it all feels easier than trying to explain to your best friend why his taxes just tripled. You don't know what comes next. Maybe you'll rise higher. Maybe the Lord's nephew will arrive and send you back to the stables. Maybe another war will break out and you'll march again. But for now, you pull your cloak tight, lean back against the cool stone wall of the manor barn, and breathe in the silence. A silence earned not through swords or speeches, but by outlasting the noise. In the distance, a rooster crows. Of course. It's always the rooster. You wake to frost edging the windows and a stiffness in your joints that makes you question whether you're secretly 75. The manor barn creaks in the wind. A dog barks once, distantly, and someone curses, likely over a spilled milk pail or a stubborn goat. Another morning begins. As assistant steward, you're now the bearer of both petty complaints and impossible demands. The baker's flour supply is short, again. The reeve insists someone skimming barley from the granary. The miller has accidentally taken a cartload too many, and the tanner refuses to pay his due, citing spiritual illness. You're not sure what that is, but it sounds suspiciously like laziness wrapped in incense. Your days are long and filled with parchment, boots, and the kind of polite small talk that makes your teeth itch. Your evenings. A quiet meal, if you're lucky. Maybe a few pages of a borrowed manuscript by candlelight. You've been slowly sounding out words in Latin, which might be heresy or might be impressive, depending on who catches you. Mainstream fact: in late medieval villages, literacy among commoners was rare but rising, especially among those in administrative roles like reeves, clerks, or stewards. Latin remained the language of the church and official documents, though local dialects flourished in daily life. Your status has shifted in subtle ways. You're no longer quite one of them. But you're not really one of them either: the lords, the clerics, the velvet-cloaked crowd who speak of land as if it were chessboard squares. You exist in between. An awkward, precarious place to balance. Like trying to walk across a muddy field in slippers. People still nod when they pass you in the village, but fewer stop to chat. Gossip dies down when you approach. Some children now refer to you as Sir Rat, which, while anatomically confusing, is clearly not affectionate. You take small solace in the rhythms of the seasons. In winter, the village slows. Smoke curls from thatched roofs. Children skate awkwardly on frozen puddles. The world crunches beneath your boots. You make rounds of the storage sheds, counting salted meat, dried beans, and the barrels of wine that are very much not for peasant use, but somehow always end up a little lighter than they should. Fringe tidbit: rats weren't just pests, they were also considered omens. In some superstitions, their presence in granaries meant famine was coming; in others, they were blamed for bringing misfortune, or worse, messages from the devil in fur. Then one morning, the bells ring. Not in celebration. Not for a festival. But with a slow, dragging rhythm that curls into your bones like cold water. The priest announces it with trembling hands: illness has arrived. You're not sure where it came from. A traveling merchant. A group of wandering monks. A soldier's wife who returned coughing after market day. But within a week, people begin to fall ill. Fevers. Lesions. Vomiting. Then silence. Historians still argue whether the term plague should be reserved for the Black Death or applied broadly to the various waves of epidemic disease that swept across Europe. Either way, for the people living through it, a name meant little. Only the fear mattered. You organize quarantines. You assign healthy families to deliver food at doorsteps. You try to limit panic. It doesn't work. A girl dies clutching her favorite wooden doll. An old shepherd wanders into the woods and never returns. The village priest spends hours in prayer before collapsing mid-sermon. You are no healer. But you help bury the dead. At first, each grave is carefully dug, blessed, and marked. But as the days pass, the dead outnumber the living hands. Mass pits are dug beyond the fields. Ash is thrown into the air. Families disappear behind shuttered windows, never to re-emerge. You stop tracking names. Even in your detached role, grief reaches you. You lose a friend, from the trenches. He'd returned from war with a limp and a crooked smile, always quick with a filthy joke and a grim toast. He coughs once, twice, and by sundown, he's gone. You sit beside his body, under a weeping tree. Say nothing. Just listen to the wind. There's no one left to laugh at his jokes but you. Fringe tidbit: some medieval towns turned to bizarre rituals during plague outbreaks, ringing bells to ward off spirits, whipping themselves in processions, or creating plague saints by accident when someone survived unexpectedly. Fear bred strange hope. The manor goes quiet. The lord and his household retreat behind walls, barely issuing orders anymore. You remain in the village, organizing the living. Planting winter crops. Distributing dwindling stores. And one morning, the bells stop. Not because the plague is over, but because there's no one left to ring them. But, slowly, it changes. A week with no new deaths. Then 2. A child recovers. A dog wags its tail again. Life, stubborn and small, begins to breathe again. You mark the moment when a baby is born. You don't even know the mother's name, just that she smiled, thin and tired, and the baby cried. That sound cuts the silence like sunlight through clouds. You're thinner, your clothes looser, your eyes heavier. But you're alive. And so are they. The village begins to wake again. Fields are tended. Bread is baked. Even the geese return, loud and unapologetic as ever. Someone finds a fiddle and plays by the firelight. It's a clumsy tune, but no one complains. Mainstream fact: many villages across Europe were nearly wiped out by the Black Death and other epidemics. But those that survived often found themselves with more land, better wages, and a slightly less rigid social structure, as death, paradoxically, made room for change. You help rebuild. Roof by roof. Brick by brick. Name by name. There's still mourning, still ghosts in every shadow. But there's laughter too, muted, yes, but real. And when you look in the mirror, you see someone you barely recognize. A survivor, yes. But also, a leader. You, the peasant child. You, the trench digger. You, the assistant steward. You, the one who stayed when others fled. And as spring returns, the bells ring again. This time, for a wedding. The wedding is small. Just a few families gathered in a field that's still a little soggy from yesterday's rain. The bride's dress is borrowed, and the groom's tunic doesn't quite fit his shoulders, but they smile like the sun's come back just for them. Chickens wander through the crowd. Someone strums a lyre out of tune. A baby wails, then immediately falls asleep in the arms of a grandmother who smells like lavender and boiled cabbage. You're not in the wedding party. But you're invited. Which, in its own way, is a kind of honor. The village is lighter now, fewer people, yes, but also fewer walls between those who remain. You nod at folks who once glared. Share bread with families who once muttered about Sir Rat. The pain isn't gone. But it's changed shape. Softer at the edges. Woven into the rhythm of things. You still serve as steward. Though now, the title carries less resentment and more trust. People know your face. Know your voice. Know that when you say, "We'll manage," you usually mean it. You keep the ledgers. Oversee planting. Help with repairs. Carry messages for the manor. But you also deliver firewood to widows, patch cloaks for orphans, and once, without anyone seeing, hand a hungry boy your own loaf of bread. One evening, the Lord's nephew visits. Fresh-faced, with rings on every finger and a velvet cloak that looks allergic to dirt. He wants a tour of his future holdings. You show him the livestock, the bakery, the mill. He tries to ride a goat. It ends predictably. Mainstream fact: aristocrats' younger sons often inherited little and wandered estates looking for opportunities to climb. Some became priests, others soldiers, or nuisances. After he leaves, the manor steward thanks you with a quiet nod. Then hands you a pouch of silver. You blink. "You've done good work," he says. And there's talk of a clerk's position opening up at the Abbey. A real clerk's position. With ink pots. And a desk. And possibly, though you dare not dream it, clean socks. Historians still argue whether literacy was the true engine of upward mobility in medieval society or merely a footnote. But for someone like you, it's everything. Letters, numbers, names, they've given you a voice beyond your field. A way out of mud, and manure, and war. Still, you don't leave right away. You take the winter to think. Tend to the village. Teach a few children to read their names. Patch a thatched roof. Repair a crumbling wall. Then, on the first warm day of spring, you pack your things: a worn tunic, a sharp quill, a small loaf wrapped in cloth. You say goodbye with handshakes, a few tears, and one very awkward group hug involving two geese. You walk to the Abbey. It stands on a hill above a stream, its stone walls dappled with moss, its windows glowing amber in the late afternoon light. The monks welcome you quietly. A cell is prepared. A desk cleared. A page unrolled. You dip the quill. Begin to write. Fringe tidbit: some monasteries offered clerical training to non-noble boys who showed promise. Over time, a few rose to surprising heights in church or royal administration, proof that knowledge could, occasionally, rival birthright. Your days now hum with gentle ritual. Morning bells. Silent meals. Pages to copy. Accounts to manage. The scratching of ink on parchment becomes a kind of music. You grow calluses on your fingers, not from plows or spears, but from writing psalms and tax records. At night, you sleep in peace. No rats. No trench stench. Just the quiet creak of wooden beams and the soft breath of those nearby. And sometimes, when you pause in the garden or walk the corridors with the rising sun, you remember. The village. The fields. The frost. The chaos of war. The silence of plague. The crackling laughter of a wedding fire. And you realize, you've lived more lives than most kings. So when the Abbey sends word to a nearby town looking for a new record keeper, a scribe, someone steady, you go. And when the town grows to trust you, and offers you a seat on its council, you stay. And when, at last, you grow old, not from hardship, but from time, you sit by the fire in a stone house with shutters painted blue, and you read to the neighborhood children from the Book of Hours, your voice warm, your hand steady. And they listen. Because you've seen it all. And survived it all. And somehow, after trench mud and fire, disease and famine, or cries and bells, you still know how to laugh. And now, as the last coals flicker in the hearth, and the candle wax pools low in its dish, we come to the end of this quiet, winding tale. You've been through a life lived backwards, in borrowed boots and woolen sleeves, among whispers and footfalls from a world long gone. You've trudged through mud, stood beside grief, and learned the language of survival, word by ink-stained word. You've seen that history, however distant, however dusty, is filled with people not so different from you. With cracked knuckles, crooked smiles, and soft hearts that beat quietly beneath the weight of the everyday. Take a breath. Let your shoulders loosen. The fires have gone out. The bells are quiet now. Even the geese, those terrible beasts, have finally roost. Outside, the wind moves slowly across the fields. And the stars above blink lazily, like someone drifting to sleep with one eye half open. You've done enough. You've gone far. Tonight, you rest not as a farmer, or a soldier, or a clerk, but as yourself. A traveler through time. A quiet witness to centuries. A soul wrapped in story. So close your eyes. Let the hush take hold. Let the stillness of another world settle softly over yours. And when you dream, may it be of harvest dances, ink-stained pages, and warm bread by a quiet fire. Sleep well.